From his age finally catching up to the 38-year-old to having achieved enough to be considered the GOAT, here's the real reason why LeBron James's career could be coming to an end. Age, man, it catches up with just about everyone, doesn't it? With LeBron, a lot of people felt like it would never happen. And while his quality and production on court hasn't changed, injuries seem to be becoming a common problem for James. That's something which was never a problem for him. And the one thing you could be sure of, apart from LeBron making the NBA Finals, was that he'd be playing the game, no matter what the circumstances. He's been blessed with a body that no one else in sporting history can possibly rival. In a game where there are a million ways to get injured, just ask Anthony Davis. LeBron James seems to be the odd one out, like always. At 38 years of age, though, it feels like the only way of getting the king to retire would be something even he doesn't have an answer to. Could it really be the end, though? His availability record seems to suggest so. Ever since James made the famous switch to the Los Angeles Lakers, he's had a tough time in terms of injuries. If you compare LeBron's late 30s with any other player in NBA history, you wouldn't call his struggle with injuries tough. The man is still arguably the most consistent and by far the best player on that Lakers roster. When he's on the court and raging his way through the opposition, there's no one better, even now. Unfortunately, every player has to stop eventually, right? For LeBron, the problem isn't going to be his quality diminishing or his failure to influence and dictate games the way he used to. As it stands, the most likely villain in LeBron's career is not Steph Curry or Kevin Durant. It's injuries. In his final season in Cleveland, LeBron played every single regular season game and then produced one of the all-time greatest playoff runs to take that mediocre roster to the finals. 1 year later in Los Angeles, he recorded the lowest number of games he's played in a season, with 55. And since then, the King hasn't played more than 67 games in any season. This is a massive problem for someone in their late 30s, because with age, recovery times start to get longer, and injuries start to become more common, no matter how much care you take of your body, because LeBron's not left any stone unturned in that department. The four-time MVP spends $1 million on his fitness per year, for crying out loud. I mean, he is a billionaire, so it's not like he's got any financial problems, but it seems that all the money in the world can't do anything about the aging process. And that's the reason why LeBron will sooner or later need to accept that his time is up. Of course, he's got that ability to defy all expectations. So don't be surprised if we watch back on this video 5 years from now and Bron's still going strong. If it happens, it's only going to be because of his undeniable love for the sport and his commitment to staying healthy. Earlier in 2023, LeBron visited the LeBron James of doctors, in his own words, which translates to the very best. In fact, as per the initial diagnosis, LeBron wasn't expected to return at all in 2022-23. According to many insiders, he'd planned to undergo surgery over the offseason and wanted to make a big return to action in the NBA in the 2023-24 season. It looks like LeBron's doctors fixed him up well enough for him to return to action. But he's not quite the same 38-year-old that turned up earlier in 2023, right? Tell me I'm not the only one who noticed that. For instance, let's just look at his performance against the Atlanta Hawks on his 38th birthday. That's the LeBron James we're used to seeing. The version that turned up in the 2023 playoffs was still very good and extremely productive, but he wasn't quite himself, you know? Obviously, whatever LeBron's injury is, it's serious enough for a possible surgery in the offseason. So it's not exactly a surprise that it's causing him enough issues to limit his mobility. That might be the reason that James decides to call it a day, too. Not many players make a return from that serious an injury at this age. Let's pull out an example from the tennis world. Roger Federer had similar luck when it came to injuries, but it was a serious knee injury that stopped the Swiss maestro from making a comeback. Will we see the same happen to James? Well, a lot of that depends on whether or not he gets the surgery done in the offseason, whether or not he makes a full recovery from it, and most importantly, how does he adjust to the NBA after making a recovery? Because the thing about the GOATs across the sporting world is that they hate losing. Oh yeah, that's an incredibly important point to talk about. Again, look at what Serena Williams did with her retirement, or what Tom Brady did after making a comeback from his. Both those players were serial winners in the primes of their careers. LeBron James isn't too different. He wants to win all there is to win, and more often than not, he does end up on the winning side. So as much as these GOATs love to play their respective sports, they became the best because of their thirst to be the best. That stems from a competitive spirit, and that competitive spirit will not allow them to just play in the NBA without any goals. James said it himself earlier in the season about how he'd retire the day he knew he wasn't good enough. Yeah, as far as LeBron is concerned, that might never happen. Be honest, would you bet against a 43-year-old LeBron dominating an NBA game? I wouldn't. We've already seen how he's adapted to a much laid-back role, and given how he's in the top 4 for most assists in NBA history, I, for one, wouldn't be surprised if he ends up becoming a creative player at the latter end of his career. But with an important caveat: success. If LeBron fails to win games regularly for his team, then he'll definitely think about retiring sooner rather than later. Plus, if mic'd-up exchanges between players are to be believed, that sooner might be happening very soon. During a regular season game, back in February of 2023, LeBron was caught on the mic saying how he's got a couple of years left in him at best. Most fans hope that it was just LeBron messing around, and that he didn't mean it. But it kind of falls in line with what his original plan was regarding his retirement. James's contract ends in 2025. If he plans on retiring, it would make sense for him to call it a day at the end of his current contract. Not to forget, it's also the perfect plan because LeBron wants to go out on his own terms, and this timeline would allow him to do just that. This 2-year plan allows LeBron to play the 2023-24 season with the Lakers, at the end of which he'd have the player option to opt for free agency. That coincides with the 2024 NBA draft. In the first year, LeBron's eldest son, Bronny James, will be eligible to declare himself. Now, the King has, on many occasions, made it clear that he'd love to play at least a season with his son. And this timeline makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? He can choose to go wherever his son ends up. Money wouldn't be an issue because LeBron would be fulfilling his dream. Think about it. The level he's achieved and the success he's experienced, nothing would make more sense for James to walk out of the NBA on his own terms. Add to that his own career, where LeBron has achieved just about everything there is to achieve. And I'm not ruling out further rings or finals MVPs. A regular season MVP might be too much to expect from someone in their late 30s, but I wouldn't be betting against LeBron to produce a finals MVP-worthy performance, should he get there. Enough about hypothetical scenarios, though. LeBron has achieved everything there is to achieve in his career. He's won multiple individual and team awards, and he'll continue to break plenty of other longevity records until his final day in the league. LeBron is better than any other player has ever been in their late 30s. What he'd love to do, though, is retire on a high. So if he can get his hands on another championship, LeBron would get the perfect chance to step out with his head held high. Whether or not he can get his hands on another ring is a different story altogether. But when you're LeBron James, you ain't got anything riding on that final ring. You've got backup options, which would be fairy tale endings for other players, cause no other player-son combination has ever stepped on an NBA court before. And if LeBron gets to do that in 2 years' time, he'd have added so much more to his already spotless legacy. So, from achieving all there is to achieve, to age finally catching up with him, these were the real reasons why LeBron James could be calling it quits to his NBA career.